proposition, and and they know it, and that's why they're talking about process rather than the substance of what we have heard. I just won't even dignify what they're saying in that regard. I just won't. No, but we are engaged in what the Constitution charges the Congress to do, to make its decisions. We are not here to be manipulated by the obstruction of justice of the administration. On the one hand, they say that it is secondhand, and on the other hand, they obstruct all of the people who they would consider to have firsthand knowledge from testifying. Obstruction of Congress, obstruction of justice. I'm going to come back to H.R. 6. This is something that we're so proud of. But over 160 days ago, we sent to the Senate H.R. 6, the American Dream and Promise Act. This is a bill that would protect our dreamers in our country. These young people who've come to our country made such a valuable contribution. We're grateful to them for that and to their parents for bringing them here. And the president has said he supports the dreamers on the one hand, and on the other hand, he calls them thugs. So you never know who's showing up that day in the White House. But the fact is that the American people support the dreamers. And I hope that the Senate will, again, be cognizant of the fact that like 80% of the American people want the dreamers protected in our country. So we started Tuesday morning on the steps of the Supreme Court as the court was hearing the oral arguments, beginning and then hearing the oral arguments on the legislation that relates to, on a policy that relates to the dreamers. At the same time, we're fighting them in the courts. We're fighting the president in the court of public opinion and winning that, and now we're in the Congress of the United States as well. I just want to remind, and I didn't go to the oral hearings arguments this time because so many people had an appetite for the tickets. That's usually the case. But when you're there, you have to be very constrained. You can't even adjust your glasses because they might think you're taking a picture or something. It's a very, I don't know if you've ever been to the oral arguments, but the temptation to jump up and say something is great. Of course, you can't. But if I had been there, what I would have said is that President Ronald Reagan, you've heard me talk about his last speech and how supportive he was of newcomers to America as the vital force of America's preeminence in the world. But in addition to that, before his last speech as President of the United States, when the Congress passed the immigration bill of 1986, a comprehensive bipartisan bill passed the Congress, signed by President Reagan, he then said to Congress, "You did not do enough." So he instituted family fairness, which gave protection to a higher percentage of people than President Obama did with the DACA order. Higher percentage. President Reagan and Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush, and then the continuation in that presidency going on with President Clinton, President George W. Bush, President Obama, all supportive of that point of view until this president. It's very sad. So I would hope that the court would, President Reagan's decisions were upheld by the court. I would hope that this court would use that as precedent. But we'll see. We don't know. I've heard different versions of how people interpreted what one judge said, another judge said, and the rest. But I do know one thing, that if the court supports President Trump on this, they will be doing great harm to hundreds of thousands of people and families in our country, and I hope that pain will be a part of their consideration because they have to consider the impact, and I hope that they will understand the blessing to America that our newcomers are, and I hope that the Senate will pass H.R. 6. Thank you.
Such a patsy, Cheryl. I wish you didn't get Mrs. Republican.